Finally, vaccinations for everybody above the age of 18 from the 1st of May. The government says on a day India reported a new record high of 2.73 lakh cases a day. States can now buy COVID vaccines directly from manufacturers, says the centre. Delhi locks down as cases touch 24,000. The capital records the highest daily deaths till date. The capital to stay under lockdown till Monday morning. Essential services, public transport to continue to run. The Chief Minister appeals with folded hands that migrants should stay, but the migrant exodus begins. Former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh is admitted at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences with a fever. He tests positive for the coronavirus. After Rahul Gandhi, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee cuts down her Bengal campaign amidst a frightening rise in COVID cases in the state. Prime Minister Modi does not cut down on his rallies. He clubs his rallies together. He will hold 4 rallies in a day this week, but only of 500 people's strength. People flock to liquor stores in the capital before the week-long lockdown begins. This grandma says, forget the vaccines. She needs a peg to beat Corona. Hello and welcome. You're watching NDTV. I'm Sarah Jacob. The big story of the day. Finally, vaccines will be open and available to everyone. Every Indian above the age of 18 will be eligible to take the coronavirus vaccine. From the 1st of May, the government announced on a day after Prime Minister Modi held a series of meetings as India struggles to slow down the record daily surges in COVID cases the country is seeing. All adults will now be vaccinated and states can buy vaccines directly from makers for this phase, the government said, on a day where India reported a new high of 2.73 lakh cases in a day. So far, the government has allowed vaccinations only for health workers, frontline workers and those above 45 in a centrally controlled process. Now, pricing, procurement, eligibility and administering of vaccines will be more flexible in this latest round of the world's largest vaccination drive. So according to the new rules, vaccine manufacturers will supply 50% of their doses to the central government and they will be free to supply the remaining doses to state governments and in the open market. Vaccinations at central government centres will be provided free of cost. That will continue for those eligible currently, that's health workers, frontline workers and those above 45. But state governments, private hospitals, industrial establishments, they can now directly buy vaccine doses from manufacturers. Manufacturers will have to declare prices in advance for the vaccine supplied to state governments and in the open market. And the government's announcement came on a day when India reported its highest ever single-day spike of COVID-19 cases with over 2.73 lakh new cases and more than 1,600 deaths in the last 24 hours. And now that vaccines are being opened up to all Indians, does India have enough vaccines to vaccinate everyone above 18? Sunil Prabhu joins us. Sunil, in his meetings, the Prime Minister stressed that the vaccine was the biggest weapon in the fight against the coronavirus. And now the Finance Ministry taking steps to ensure production?
There are 2-3 steps. One, of course, as you're putting it, 3,000 crores being given to Serum Institute, another 1,500 crores to the Bharat Biotech. This is, of course, the money that has been given is an advance payment for up till July. And, of course, they've tweaked it a little bit because usually when government buys something, you have to give a bank guarantee. In this case, there is no bank guarantee required. So these institute, the Serum Institute and the Bharat Biotech are being given that amount of benefit by the Government of India. The Finance Ministry has given and cleared that proposal. Having said that, we get to the brass tacks of how are you going to go ahead and ensure vaccination for all, especially since you're opening it up. So there'll be 2 proposals. That is, of course, if you have the 50%, that is, it is A, that will be procured by government at 150 rupees per vaccine. That 150 rupees will be given free of cost in all government institutes, that is AIIMS, any central government hospital in that regard. The other 50% can be bought by state governments, can be bought by industrial institutes, by private hospitals. This will, of course, be subject to review and how things go out. As you rightly said, this is India's largest and biggest vaccination program, the world's largest. So we'll have to see. There will definitely be certain problems as the days go by, but they will definitely be tweaked as it's being done now after we've seen that record surge once again.
And the national capital has recorded nearly 24,000 cases in the last 24 hours and the highest daily deaths till date at 240 deaths. This even as Delhi has entered a 6-day lockdown from 10 p.m. on Monday night to 5 a.m. next Monday. Announcing the 6-day lockdown, Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal called it a necessity, given the city's resources are at a breaking point in an escalating COVID crisis. Only essential services will now be allowed.
आज 25,000 केस आए हैं. अब दिल्ली का हेल्थ सिस्टम अपनी सीमा तक पहुंच गया है. हमारा हेल्थ सिस्टम अब बहुत ज्यादा तनाव में है.
Beginning on today at 10 p.m, Delhi will have a 6-day lockdown till 5 a.m. next Monday. At one of Delhi's biggest bus and railway terminal at Anand Vihar, thousands of migrant workers are rushing home.
पिछली बार है हमने बहुत मार खाई थी, सब्जी फब्जी बेची थी, बहुत ज्यादा कहते हैं खाने को मिलेगा, हमें कुछ नहीं मिला था पिछली बार भी. मैम पिछली बार भी हमें 2 दिन का बोला था, फिर 2 से 4, 4 से 8 ऐसे पिछली बार भी बढ़ाते गए, फिर हम फंस गए यहाँ पे. हमें
इस दौरान जाहिर है कि जो एसेंशियल सर्विसेज हैं वो जारी रहेंगी, खाने पीने की, मेडिकल व्यवस्थाओं की वो जारी रहेंगी.
But here is what is allowed. Food, dairy and grocery shops, pharmaceuticals and opticians, banks and ATMs, delivery of essentials through e-commerce, fuel pumps, home delivery of food, metro and buses at 50% capacity within stipulated time, no standing passengers allowed in public transport, up to 2 passengers in autos and cabs, 50 guests allowed at a wedding with a valid marriage card, cap of 20 people for funeral rites. And here is what is not allowed. Bars and restaurants, malls and shopping centers, public parks and educational centers, swimming pools, spas and gyms, salon and barber shops, social or political gatherings, entertainment or cultural gatherings, religious or festive gatherings. Crowds rushed to stock up on liquor, but this morning several of Delhi's more crowded markets had declared a self-lockdown.
तो ग्राहक आएगा ही नहीं तो हम दुकान खोल के करेंगे क्या? ये यहाँ जगह पे काम दुकान खुलता था तो कमाते थे हम लोग, इसलिए बंद हो जाएगा तो कमाएंगे कहाँ से?
Delhi's lockdown was perhaps to be expected after the Chief Minister himself tweeted out just 1 day ago describing the situation as an emergency. The 6-day lockdown comes as a need of the hour. With camera person Prem Singh, Shanakshi Chakravarti for NDTV.
And the Delhi Chief Minister appealed to migrant workers not to leave the national capital during what he called was a small lockdown, but his assurances seem to be falling on deaf ears.
जैसे ही एक हफ्ते के लॉकडाउन का ऐलान हुआ, वैसे ही मजदूर तबका और मध्यम वर्गीय परिवार अपने गांव के लिए निकल पड़े हैं. इस वक्त मैं दिल्ली के आनंद विहार बस अड्डे पर हूं और यहां पर आपको दिखाता हूं कि किस कदर लोगों की भीड़ है. लोग अपने घरों की तरफ रवाना हो रहे हैं. आप देखिए कि लॉकडाउन का ऐलान होने के बाद किस तरह से हजारों की संख्या में लोग उमड़ पड़े हैं और अपने घरों के लिए रवाना हो रहे हैं. ये देखिए आनंद विहार बस अड्डे की तस्वीरें हैं और मेरे लेफ्ट में यहाँ पर आपको दिखाता हूँ कि ये गाजियाबाद का बस अड्डा है और यहाँ किस कदर जो मजदूर तबका है या आम लोग हैं वो लॉकडाउन का ऐलान होने के बाद यहाँ से अपने घरों की तरफ रवाना हो रहे हैं. ये देखिए पूरा का पूरा जो बस अड्डा है वहाँ पर किस कदर भीड़ बढ़ती जा रही है. एक तरह का पलायन है. ये पलायन हमने बीते साल देखा था जब लॉकडाउन हुआ था और लोग सैकड़ों किलोमीटर की लंबी दूरी पैदल तय करके यहाँ से गए थे. ये देखिए फुट ओवर ब्रिज के ऊपर किस कदर भीड़ है यहाँ पर और जिस तरह से लोगों की संख्या आनंद विहार बस अड्डे पर बढ़ती जा रही है उसको देखते हुए यहाँ पर ट्रैफिक जाम भी काफ़ी ज़्यादा हो रहा है। ये मेरे राइट में आप देखिए कि ट्रैफिक जाम हो रहा है, बहुत सारे ऑटो टैक्सियाँ बड़े धीमी रफ्तार से यहाँ से निकल रहे हैं। अब मैं रोड के दूसरी ओर भी दिखाता हूँ कि किस तरह से बड़ी संख्या में लोग लगातार यहाँ पर आ रहे हैं और अपने घरों की तरफ रवाना हो रहे हैं। ये देखिए सामने कितनी दूरी तक ट्रैफिक जाम हो रखा है और ये लगातार यहाँ देखिए कितनी भीड़ है। आप बताइए कहाँ जा रहे हैं?
बिहार।
लॉकडाउन हो गया इसलिए जा रहे हैं?
जी जी।
अच्छा, तो यहाँ क्या काम करते थे?
यहाँ हम लोग मजदूर आदमी थे, बिजली वाला काम करते थे।
तो आप क्यों जा रहे हैं?
यहाँ काम ही बंद हो गया पूरा।
अच्छा,
इसीलिए हम जा रहे हैं सीतापुर।
लॉकडाउन के चक्कर में?
जी।
अब कब लौटेंगे? अब
कोई पता ना है।
अच्छा, जब तक लॉकडाउन रहेगा तब तक
नहीं आएंगे।
नहीं आएंगे आप? तो पिछली बार भी गए थे आप लोग क्या?
हम पिछली बार पैदल गए थे।
And former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, who's 88, has tested positive for the coronavirus and has been admitted to the trauma centre of Delhi's All India Institute of Medical Sciences. The veteran Congress leader was administered a COVID test after registering a fever after one of his physio team members turned positive. Dr. Singh has received both his vaccine doses of Covaxin, the first on the 4th of March, the second on the 3rd of April. On Sunday, the former Prime Minister wrote to Prime Minister Modi to offer some advice on handling a pandemic. In his letter, Dr. Singh stressed on ramping up the vaccination drive to defeat the virus and said that the centre had to proactively support vaccine producers in expanding manufacturing facilities. He urged Prime Minister Modi to allow states to define who needed to be vaccinated on a priority basis, even if they are below the age of 45. And on Monday evening, the centre opened up vaccinations to all above the age of 18 starting the 1st of May. Yet, Dr. Singh's letter provoked a sharp and unflattering response from the Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, early on Monday morning, where he attacked the Congress party and blamed it for fueling the second wave of the virus. Meanwhile, the director of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences has told NDTV that he was shifted to hospital as a matter of precaution only.
The former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, quite unwell with COVID. What is his condition now?
So he's stable. He is COVID positive, but currently he is in good condition. He's stable. He's holding his oxygen saturation. But considering his age and comorbidities, it was felt that it is safe. A safer option would be for him to be in hospital rather than be in home isolation, and that is why, for observation, he has been shifted to the hospital.
All right, and he's otherwise okay at the moment, and he's been well looked after at this juncture.
Correct. As of now, he's currently all right. He's on room air. He's not requiring to be given oxygen or anything like that.
And as Prime Minister Modi is coming for growing criticism across the political spectrum for holding large election rallies under a brutal second wave, leaving citizens begging for everything from oxygen to hospital beds on social media, the BJP chief JP Nadda has now announced that the party's remaining rallies in the state of West Bengal will have no more than 500 people present. On Monday, amidst a surge in COVID-19 cases, the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee announced that she would not organize any big rallies or roadshows in Kolkata to avoid large gatherings. On Sunday, Rahul Gandhi announced he was cancelling his rallies and urged other leaders to do the same. JP Nadda said, made this announcement by saying that assembly elections are going on in West Bengal and the completion of this constitutional and democratic process is also very important. And so, keeping this in mind, the parties decided that all rallies going forward will only have 500 people present. Let's go in for a short break. More coming up after that. Welcome back. Now, even as there have been frightening reports of a severe shortage of medical oxygen supplies in hospitals across India, the government on Monday admitted that more COVID patients are suffering breathlessness in this second wave than any other symptom, leading to a greater need for oxygen this time round.
As people scramble for oxygen all over the country and measures are taken to ramp up production, the government today admitted that in the second wave there are more patients who need oxygen. there has been 54.5% more supplemental oxygen requirement in the second wave as compared to 41.4% in the first wave. 47.5% patients have reported shortness of breath as a symptom in the second wave as compared to 41.7% in the first wave. But as people gasp for breath, the government claims that it has more to do with panic for hospitalization and an irrational use of oxygen.
So there was a panic, people wanted to get admitted to hospitals and therefore the oxygen requirement suddenly shot up, and rationalized use of oxygen is very important. All hospitals and all physicians ensure that the oxygen usage has to be very rationalized, number one, and number two, wastage of oxygen should not happen.
This comes a day after Union Minister Piyush Goyal claimed that state governments should keep demand for oxygen under control, a statement that received criticism by opposition leaders.
राज्य सरकारों को हमने अनुरोध किया कि वो उस पर भी थोड़ा नजर रखें, निगरानी रखें, और डिमांड साइड मैनेजमेंट भी उतना ही इम्पोर्टेंट है जितना सप्लाई साइड मैनेजमेंट, और कोविड फैलाव को रोकना राज्य सरकारों की जिम्मेदारी है.
Congress leader Digvijay Singh called it stupid and the government's failure to plan for emergency, while another Congress leader, Manish Tiwari, said that the minister was passing the buck when people are dying. The silver lining, the government experts say, is that the rate of deaths has not increased. There is only a marginally higher proportion of patients in the younger age group despite the opening up of activities. The government today also cautioned about the irrational use of remdesivir and other drugs.
So it's important to understand that remdesivir is not the magic bullet, and it is not a drug which is decreasing mortality. Remdesivir was shown to be useful only in those patients who were hospitalized, who had fall in oxygen saturation and had infiltrates on the chest X-ray. It is useful only in moderate illness.
The government added that other drugs like tocilizumab, Fabiflu or Favipiravir can be used as supportive treatment, but there is not enough scientific proof in their favor, so they should be used judiciously. And all the protocols that have been issued by the government for treatment should be followed strictly. In New Delhi with camera person Sushil Rathi, this is Sukirti Dwivedi for NDTV.
And sources in the Food and Drugs Administration have told NDTV that the agency has not given the BJP or any political party permission to procure the key antiviral medicine that several states, including and especially Maharashtra, are struggling to find in the second wave, remdesivir. This after a huge controversy has erupted in Maharashtra with BJP leaders, including the former Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis, involved in efforts to procure remdesivir, they say, for the state.
I am not blaming you, but it is not in good faith.
These images of top BJP leaders at a police station in Mumbai to secure the release of a pharma company official has escalated into a major controversy. The BJP claimed they were trying to get the doses of remdesivir from a Daman-based company, Brook Pharma, for which they claimed to have gotten permission from the state government. They claimed they had planned to hand over the life-saving drugs to the government to distribute. Instead, they claimed the police acted under pressure from some leaders in the government to obstruct the supply.
ये जो सारी राजनीति चल रही है, ये बहुत गलत राजनीति है. हम महाराष्ट्र के लिए प्रयास कर रहे हैं.
FDA sources have told NDTV that FDA completed formalities and gave an authorization letter to Brook Pharma for a consignment to be sent to Maharashtra. But importantly, they add that they have no idea as to how political parties got involved, and this political party includes, of course, the BJP, which says that it was getting supplies from Maharashtra, including the leader of opposition who claims he was getting supplies from Maharashtra.
The FDA says that Brook Pharma is one of the 12 big pharma companies that it had approached to supply remdesivir to Maharashtra. According to the FDA, only government agencies can procure and distribute drugs.
When asked if the BJP had permission to procure remdesivir for the state of Maharashtra, the BJP shared a letter written by Praveen Darekar to the Food and Drugs Administration seeking permission for companies like Brook Pharma to supply to Maharashtra. But written evidence specifically allowing the party to procure remdesivir from Maharashtra is yet to emerge.
But there is confusion over whether the MVA government did give the go-ahead to the BJP or not. Several ministers hit out at the BJP asking how it could buy and distribute life-saving drugs. Meanwhile, the Gujarat police have arrested an official from Brook Pharma for alleged black marketing, selling each injection for an exorbitant Rs 12,000.
एक वरुण कुंद्रा करके फर्नीचर शॉप का ओनर है, वो 12,000 रुपये में रेमडेसिविर इंजेक्शन की बिक्री कर रहा है। डिकोय करने पर उसके पास से 12 इंजेक्शन बरामद हुए और उसको पूछने कि वो इंजेक्शन कहाँ से लाता है तो दमन में करीब में ब्रुक्स फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनी है जिसके पास रेमडेसिविर एक्सपोर्ट करने का लाइसेंस है। तो रिसेंटली जो एक्सपोर्ट बंद हुआ है उसका लाभ लेकर उसके जो मैनेजर है मनीष सिंह ने उसको ये इंजेक्शन बेचे थे और मनीष सिंह को गिरफ्तार करने पर उसके घर से और 6 इंजेक्शन बरामद हुए। इस तरीके से रेमडेसिविर के 18 इंजेक्शन प्राप्त हुए हैं।
Citizens in Maharashtra have been running from pillar to post trying to arrange remdesivir for their near and dear ones. In this situation, could we expect politicians to keep their differences aside and work together to procure remdesivir for desperate citizens so that Maharashtra doesn't suffer from a shortage that it's seeing right now? In Mumbai, with Purva Chitnis and camera person Rajendra Dayalkar, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
And finally, Britain on Monday imposed its strictest travel curbs on India after an explosion of coronavirus cases here, hours after the Prime Minister Boris Johnson called off a trip to New Delhi. The Health Secretary Matt Hancock has said that effective from Friday, India is being added to Britain's red list of countries banning all arrivals from India except for UK or Irish nationals, and these nationals as well as foreigners residents in the UK must or will have to pay hefty amounts to stay in a government-approved quarantine hotel for 10 days on their return from red list nations, which include Pakistan and Bangladesh. The UK and Indian governments earlier on Monday called off Boris Johnson's visit, which was set for next week after already being postponed in January. And finally, we're going to leave you with these visuals at the Vangani station of Central Railways, where a pointsman, saved the life of a 6-year-old just in time. Amazing presence of mind there. So glad to actually end the bulletin with some good news. That's the news at this hour.